Hello ladies and gentlemen, Dave Dobbs here. It's May the 20th, 2025 and well, what an interesting time it is. It's proving to be. We've got exactly what I told you you'd see at this time coming into view right now, and it's a very, very odd thing. In my last video I said you'd be seeing things like this as we're going to see as we see this flyby, as in this point when it would cross it would come into view, this object. And indeed there's two objects, there's a pair actually, but you know, a lot of people are saying it's something to do with the sun, you know, and you know, whatever, you know, some kind of CME or something like that, but clearly it's the tail of something or other that's come into view. And there's lots and lots of shots. This shot was posted by Mr. MBB333 on May the 17th. Just an incredible shot, seen from Nebraska, but there's been lots and lots of shots of this. There was that shot, which I think is possibly a similar thing or same thing, that was posted on May the 19th by Mavi UFO Alarm. That was an incredible shot as well. And this was World of Signs on what date was that? That was on May the 17th also. I mean, you can just see this same thing. And then we had this shot that was posted on May the 18th. You know, it's just lots and lots of similar things. That was also posted by Mr. MBB333 on May the 19th. You know, it's just repeated shots of people capturing the same thing. And then we've got, you know, more debris coming through. You know, there's every excuse to try and account for it, but it's, you know, we're just seeing it over and over. And obviously we're getting lots and lots of volcanoes going off at the moment. Just absolutely incredible. In actual fact, there's you know, a week ago there was 51 volcanoes going off, and as of last week, and now it's dropped down to 47 volcanoes simultaneously going off. What else was it? It's you know, there's massive activity going on. You remember in 2019, I believe it was around about the time when I went off to Extinction Rebellion, and I said, you know, you're going to see a massive increase in volcanoes going off, and 9 volcanoes went off simultaneously, and we were calling it, you know, by that stage we were already calling all the volcanoes around the Pacific the Ring of Fire, and because they were so common, and we were getting 9 volcanoes simultaneously going off. Now the numbers have just gone off absolutely massively. So we get, you know, these volcanoes, they create megastorms because of especially the underwater volcanoes, and there's lots of activity going off under the Pacific at the moment. You know, off the coast of Oregon, and where else was it? I believe that what was I going to look at? I'm going to come back to these in a shake, but what was it? Mount Spur is showing signs of activity, and there's a big volcano there. But obviously, this is just starting to move into this object is now starting to move into these objects are starting to move into the northern hemisphere, and so we're getting all the activity. We're getting all the signs that that we would expect. You know, we're getting lots and lots of weird things with electricity, because we've got objects very close to us now, which is kind of like really messing with the Schumann resonance, as in the electromagnetic energy at Earth level. You know, because of all this kind of planetary interference. We're getting all the sightings, and we are coming up to a very big celestial date, which is the 21st of June, and it's a magnificent time. And you remember in my last video, and please excuse my fans going, because that's every now and then when I go between these images, it makes my fans kick in, and unfortunately I haven't got an external microphone. I think I've mislaid it somewhere, so I'm having to use the computer internal mic, which is a bit annoying. So it's going to come and it's going to go, but it will only come in for a little bit of time, because I've got so many things running at the moment. But it will come and it will go, and so please bear with me through the fan noise here and there when it comes up. But just as I just bounced, that was the comet that came through, the asteroid rather, that came through my boat window on I believe it was on the 17th of April last month. Directly after I said, we're on basically an asteroid alley. We're right next to the tail of this object, and then this asteroid came through and smashed my window. It didn't do any damage other than broke the window and then landed on the carpet, on this carpet here. It didn't do it. You can see all the bits of glass there on the floor where it came through, and it smashed this window, and the window was a reinforced window, so it smashed the window and then just landed perfectly on the carpet without damaging the floor. It just broke one pane of glass, which I quickly replaced, but it was a real message from the gods, just really telling me how highly managed all of this whole thing is, and it was a shocking thing to see, but quite amazing as well, unbelievable. Like so much stuff that's going on, it's just utterly unbelievable. But I talked about I used this last model, which is now very out of date, and is probably more out of date than, which is actually effectively, well, it is probably more out of date now than the penultimate model that I was running, because I'd realised, as I discussed it in the last few models, how I'd got these two the wrong way round. Herculobus, or whether you want to call it Pluto, or whether you want to call it Neptune, or whether you want to call it Uranus, or whether you want to call it Jupiter. In my opinion, they're all the same object that we reinvent every 84 years to keep us in this kind of crazy heliocentric model where we've got the sun in the middle and all the planets in a pretty circle going round, and no real direction of where the sun is going. And what we're getting is objects that are coming off this object and are coming round this object, because it's got so close to our sun, as they're rotating around this object. When these objects are right next to each other, as they are at the moment, objects orbiting Herculobus, or whatever you want to call it, the blue Caccina, as they come round, they get so close to our sun, they get drawn into our sun, and they loop right round, which is what we're experiencing right now. And objects, when our sun is basically above the ecliptic plane of the system that we're really in, then these objects come up to our sun. And when our sun is below the ecliptic plane of the big system our sun really orbits, these objects drop down. So, and we've seen both. This whole thing has been changing. It has been moving from one side. Our sun has moved from one side of the big, not the ecliptic plane of our sun, but the ecliptic plane of our sun, of the system our sun orbits. And we've actually gone through that, and we've been going through that since the May the 4th, 2018, when the first long duration volcano happened. That was when we began to transit through the ecliptic plane of the big system, and now we're on the other side. And so, before objects were coming, I'm of a mind we were below the ecliptic plane, and now we're above. And from that point they were coming up, and they'd be coming up and under, passing through, and this would be the crossing point. Somewhere in actual fact, it would be around about May, early May would be the actual crossing point. And this kind of like this, what we've got to really try and understand in this whole system is our sun moves forward, heading towards the 21st of June. And this Herculobus or Uranus or Pluto or Neptune, or whatever you want to call it, is also moving basically in the same direction. We're all charging forward, and we're though our sun and this object are orbiting planet X, or whatever you want to call the kind of like the real central object or black hole, or whatever's in the center of this big system. They're all three, as in the central primary, that all of these things really orbit. Our our sun and Herculobus, which is named after what Carlos Ferrada called it in 1939 when he said the big object would pass us on the 20th of January 1939, which came with the big 8.8 earthquake in Chile, and he predicted this exact earthquake at this time, and so I name it after that to credit to him, because it's using much of his mathematics have helped me build these astronomical models, and obviously building astronomical models. And my hope is by the 21st of June 2025 is to give you the updated version and to put these the correct way round and put sufficient overlays, because I really made a massive mistake here. But obviously, you know, my models have never been correct. They've just been a work in progress to try and understand how the system really works, and to use the technology that we have, you know, that I can run on my computer to kind of run these models and to build these simulations, or to build these digital orreries that enable us to kind of like that has enabled me to make these calculations, to be able to predict this passage here, you know. And it probably is better see it because this model runs up to because this model runs up to you remember when I predicted this passage and this passage, saying that this passage and this passage would be the same as the 2010 earthquake on the 27th of February 2010, the big I can't remember if it was an 8 or an 8.0. I think it may have been a 8.0 earthquake on the 27th of February 2010, which preceded the the 26th of February 2010, the big massive volcano eruption in Iceland, which stopped all the air travel. And then you go 1 year and 13 days later, and you come back round, and then we get the second of the pair coming through, and that's when we had obviously Fukushima on the 11th of March 2011. And then we, you know, mathematics, I'd watched all the cycles and I'd been able to predict that we would see in 12 years later we would get the whole cycle. Obviously, you know, we had that big sighting on the round about the Deal Martin's last shot of the big red dwarf planet, the what I'm calling sorry, that's not yeah, that would be Herculobus, really, and then the big blue planet orbits that. And so they are kind of, they're like nunchuckers moving in the sky, if you like. One, it's not like the blue planet is exactly orbiting that. They're in a kind of a rotation. It seems they're in a rotation like that rather than like that. And but saying with I mean, that really put me on the map when I predicted that, literally to the day, and everyone was just like, "You're mad, you're crazy!" And then boom, this incredible sighting came by on, ironically, Trump's inauguration on the 20th of January 2020. But and then I turned up in America for the next flyby, which I predicted exactly. And Steve Olson did his big show and big conference, and we did a conference to literally millions of people. And you know, it was a very difficult time for Steve because he went right up against it. You know, talking about all this stuff, as I have myself. It's been a very, very, very difficult thing to talk about, but it was seen, you know, there was many shots of it like this all at the same time on the 17th of August 2017 when I turned up in America. It was a sensational time to see it coming in and to make that prediction so exactly. And you know, these incredible flybys that we've been seeing. But and of course that shot, which was the real game changer, where I said, look out for it, you're going to see it. And that was on the 1st of September 2019. I said, look out for it. And I was thinking it was going to come in and go round. And when we'd seen it coming in and going off, we could see the whole circle of it. It was clearly orbiting something over here. Our sun clearly was not its primary. It was looking like it was coming in. So we were assuming that it was going to come in and go round, but it was actually coming in and going off. And it was conclusive, absolute pivotal evidence that we had something over here. And this was a big game changer, because it really gave us this opportunity to add this object and to begin this process of realizing that all these things were like here. I know that that's kind of on the wrong side from that perspective, but in actual fact it should be over here really. So these two are the wrong way around. And I mean, just depends on the you know, because if you're looking at something at when the sun's rising, obviously everything that's on the right of the sun when the sun's setting will be on the left side of the sun. So it depends on what side of the sun you're on, and obviously, you know, where you are on the globe, where you're viewing, whether you're viewing from the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere, and so on and so forth. So looking at when you're actually trying to calculate kind of astronomical movements, it's an unbelievably complex thing, and building astronomical models bends your brain to a massive degree. And so when I build one of these models, it takes me an enormous amount of time, an enormous amount of maths, trying to work it out. And if I ever get to a point where I'm triangulating one point, one crossing or something like that, the maths of it. And so that's why I build ORIs, or astronomical kind of like simulations, because they even once I've worked it out, then I try and go through my workings to see how I got to finding one kind of astronomical kind of like crossing point. I try and go through my own maths, and I just like, oh my god, how the hell have I got there? And trying to work through my own maths sometimes is just enormously complicated. But that was a massive time. But nonetheless, it was. But you know, these sort of shots where we see when these objects come onto the ecliptic plane, so they can actually block the sun, like Nick Thomas caught on July the 20th, 2020, and obviously Kelvin looking for Hobbes. That was a massive flyby on I believe around about the well, I've got it there on the 15th of October 2020, but I might be wrong there. It's around about that sort of time though. You know, it's but that was a Kelvin looking for Hobbes shot, so you can go back and find that. It's an amazing shot. He was just absolutely blown apart when he saw it. And of course that shot there, posted by World of Signs, caught in late November 2022, and that's what we're going to see, this the big object there. That's why I'm of mind is the big blue Kachina itself, that is actually come right round our sun, very much closer to our sun, and will cross will be much closer to us in November 2025 this year. You know, it's going to be much closer to us. You know, this is its exit corridor round about this sort of time. So from here on in, you know, every time it comes round, it does one rotation round what it orbits in 11 months. As in the twin tail objects, they take 13 months. They travel as a pair and they take 13 months. So they take longer time to do a full rotation. As this is a much bigger object, the blue Kachina is a much bigger object, and it rotates slightly quicker. So it moves forward one calendar month every year, as the twin tails move one calendar month further back each year. And I've made so many predictions, like the ones like these predictions, just telling you, you're going to see this is going to be the time when it comes onto the ecliptic, onto our ecliptic plane, where it can actually drop into our night sky. So we're getting these incredible shots of it. But certainly these two sightings, you know, I said, you know, this is when we had the big earthquakes in Turkey, and I said they're going to be incredible sightings, but they're going to be affecting the northern hemisphere. And sure enough, they came in, and you know, we say they're lenticular clouds, except they're lenticular clouds kind of on their side. It's just like it's also beyond belief, because we've been brought up in these kind of in this heliocentric model where our sun is a static sun in the middle, and all these planets are going around in a pretty circle, and we don't really have a notion of a forward motion for our sun. In actual fact, every planet that's been added to our solar system has been given a different perihelion point, and so we've never really. So that means that, you know, say Jupiter is suggesting, I'm not too sure which is the forward motion or which is the perihelion point of Jupiter right now, you know, because they've all been given a different perihelion point. As in, when an object comes in to orbit our sun, And as we're told, it's, you know, we put them all in a pretty circle going round. Well, of course, planets don't move like that. If I come back to where this model started where this model starts in 262, when we had 3 days of darkness, earthquakes all across Asia, all across Europe, all across Africa. 3 days of darkness, and this is a recorded event, you know, and it was the downfall of the Roman Empire. It's when the kind of like it's when you know, we say the Goths sacked Rome. It's when the Romans fled Europe, because the Europeans and everyone else they were on their knees. There'd been famines, there'd been plagues, there'd been earthquakes, there'd been everything we're seeing right now, crazy earth changes on a massive scale. And Rome had decimated for best part of, I mean, I'm not exactly too sure when the Roman Empire really kind of began, but I'm trying to think if it was about 60 years or 600 years BC. I mean, it wasn't that, you know, the arrival of the Romans and their rise to power, and their subsequent downfall, or not, they've really disappeared. It's just they changed their power base, their control mechanism. They went from brutal controlling mechanism, and then they became a religious base, where they controlled through they created Christianity. Or they turned Christianity into their kind of their modus operandi. It's like a cult, a way of controlling through blood sacrifice, and through kind of drinking the blood of Christ, and kind of like and they could offer forgiveness in the same ways that the kind of like the Jews had offered, you know, the forms, you know, when Christ supposedly went in and smashed up the temples, you know, because they were selling. Well, what were they selling? They were selling redemption for the crimes that the Romans were committing in their kind of like, they were, like I say, they were decimating in the form of control, and you can imagine the guilt that was coming about, you know, going out killing children and just endless war to control. And then suddenly it all comes to a massive end, and they realised there was a great rapture of sorts, and they changed their way in which they controlled, and they got other people to do these heinous crimes instead of themselves, telling them they could do these heinous forms of control in the name of God, and that God gave them permission to kind of do these heinous crimes. And this has been the control since that time, and I think that we're evolving that now. We're coming out of that. But nonetheless, the reason I brought you to this point was, in this model, as I rotate these round, and we see, you know, at this point they're right back to where they are now in 262. So we're right back to that, where the sun, and whether you want to call it Herculobus, or whether you want to call it Uranus, or whether you want to go 84 years later when you want to call it kind of Neptune, or whether you want to go 84 years later and you want to call it Pluto, or you want to go 84 years later and to where we are now and call it kind of like to call it Eris, or whatever you want to call it, this big 84-year cycle, where we reinvent the big blue planet. I try to kind of incorporate, to a degree, the orbital mechanics. So if we watch the sun coming around here, we can understand that planet X, or whatever you want to call the object, our sun and Herculobus orbit, picture it's going forward here, and our sun is coming around here. At this point here, our sun is travelling at the same speed as the primary to which it orbits. So it's travelling slower, relatively speaking. It's travelling slower past its orbit, the primary orbits, relative to the primary, if you like. So it's travelling in the same direction. So to this object, it's travelling slower. As when it comes around here, it's travelling in the opposite direction to the primary which it's orbiting, which means that as it goes down here, it's going to be travelling considerably faster. So as it passes here, it has less centrifugal force throwing it out, as when it goes over here, it has far greater centrifugal force throwing it out. And we've never incorporated that because we give every planet we've added to our sun. Imagine this is our sun now. Every planet that's going around our sun, we've said, you know, say Jupiter, we're saying its perihelium is, say, you know, is at this point here. Well, we suggest that, say, you know, Uranus, we'd say its perihelium point is here, and Saturn, its perihelium point is here, and every planet is given a different perihelium point. Well, you can't, when you're giving every other planet a different perihelium point, as in the point where an object cuts across the front, then you can't have a window on where your sun is actually going in that. You just have a static sun. We live in a static sun model. And so this is, through this model, is the first time perhaps you're going to ever have the opportunity, or have had the opportunity, to kind of give your sun a forward motion. And I've been building these models for many, many years, looking at the fundamental exit and entry corridors of objects coming in and going out, and trying to ascertain, because every time I build a model I have to try and understand which way the sun's moving, because every planet gives the sun a different kind of forward motion. It becomes very difficult to build astronomical models if you don't really know which way the sun's moving, and you live in a kind of static sun model, and if you say it in any which direction, you're kind of like you're contradicting someone else. So we live in a static sun model. Now, because of that, when we, you know, many of us, you've probably heard of Nassim Haramein. And Nassim Haramein has given you this idea of a system like this. And excuse me, as soon as I press this, my fans are going to go off again. But it will only be for a short period of time. But Nassim Haramein, he gave us this notion that our sun is moving up or either down. But he gives you this notion of the sun moving in a motion like this. And you'll notice as soon as the sun's moving in a motion where it's moving either north, on the north, heading up its north pole, or heading via its south pole, one or the other, you'll notice that we no longer have an ecliptic. In that sense, we can't have a sun, we can't have an ecliptic, all the planets on an ecliptic, because they're all in a spiral. So we know it can't move like this. But when as soon as you're going to try to attempt to give the sun motion, and then you're kind of in hell and high water, because you lose your ecliptic because you're going to replace it for this spiraling motion. And we see our solar system, we don't really see we don't really get a sense of the system our sun is really in, beyond the planets that you know Mercury, Venus, Earth and Mars. These planets that I know that are on the ecliptic plane orbiting around our sun, that are clearly on an ecliptic. And then we can see our Milky Way, which is clearly an ecliptic, and we can look out and see other systems, and we can see that planets kind of orbit on ecliptic planes. And when we give our sun motion moving either north of our north pole or south of our south pole, and we set the direction, we lose that ecliptic. We lose our ecliptic plane. We know that doesn't move like that, but nonetheless, I can see why he kind of like why Nassim Haramein gave us this model, or along the lines of this model, where he shows the sun moving and all the planets spiraling like this. But it's not the way. It's simply not the way. We can clearly see it's not the way. It contradicts everything we see out in the solar system, out in the universe that we observe. We can see things move on an ecliptic plane. And so, but nonetheless, he was the first one who gave us the notion of movement of our sun and gave us a way in which we could see the movement of our sun. But of course it can't move like that, and it doesn't move like that. But obviously, as soon as you're saying the sun moves in one direction or the other on the ecliptic plane, you're in contradiction to another planet, because we've been bound in this kind of like in this notion. And when I come back to this kind of movement where we see, objects coming in much closer to their primary on when they're traveling in the same direction as the primary, and when they're much further over here. These are the notions that, well, these were the kind of notions that this is what Isaac Newton, when Isaac Newton was giving us the ideas of gravity, this is really the notion that he was giving us, even though he took it all away. It's classic Masonic 33-degree Masonic kind of cult mind control, as in it's 33 degrees of truth, and then it's 33 degrees of lies to drive 33 degrees of agenda. And so, if we think about, because he gives us all these, he gives us gravity, and then he takes it all away and says that actually the reason the planets all orbit in this perfect circle around the sun is that God, the hand of God, placed them there. So he gives you the truth, and then he takes it all away by saying, he cancels it by saying that, but that doesn't apply to our solar system because God placed them all in this perfect circle, and that's why you don't have a notion of where our sun is going, because God put them all in this place. Even though he gives you these orbital mechanics, he kind of takes them all away at the same time. Because you'll remember that when we come back to say Kepler. So when we think about Kepler, who was the first one who gave us not the first one, but he was his three laws of orbital mechanics, which I'm not going to go into right now because they don't apply anymore. They simply don't apply anymore. But at the very base, if we see this, we can see that his rules of orbital mechanics is we don't necessarily know by this model where he shows the rules of orbital mechanics that the primary, if that's Earth orbiting our sun, it's the primary in this case. We can see that there's a kind of like an elliptic orbit where it's closer to the sun on this side and further on the sun on this side. And of course, because he doesn't ascertain that this represents that this, in this case, the perihelion point, the closest point to our sun, because we're not necessarily saying that this is because this is the front end. The sun is moving in this direction, and this is coming around the front end and going around the back. Because that's not really given. Because then we'll go and add, say, Jupiter, and it will be coming in and going around here, and then we'll add Venus, and it will be coming in and going around here, and they'll all be coming in from different angles, but doing the same thing, coming in from far away. It's, in other words, putting our sun. It's basically it's kind of like, it's like seeing the Earth at the center of where we used to see the Earth as the center of the universe. These orbital mechanics had basically put the sun somehow in the center of the universe, and everything was coming in to visit the sun. So we were assuming that this movement was because the sun was in the center, and these objects were coming in from far away and coming away. So we was not seeing that as a front end. We were just seeing all these objects reaching in and coming out. And now what I'm trying to tell you is that this represents the front edge of our sun moving forward. And all the objects have to share the same, all the objects orbiting the sun have to share the same perihelion point. It's logical. But of course, if that is true, he was just, Kepler said that if you run a line, a bit like what he's done here, but if I was to run a line from here down to here and here down to here, a bit like this, or to extend this line down to here and say this line down to here, the area in between the two, so that area in here, and then with that line running across exactly straight, and then the triangle that was carved out here, by those straight lines, that the area would be the same. Even though it would go faster here and slower around here, but it would mean that the area, the volumetric area in there would be the same on both sides, meaning that though it seems to lose speed and gain speed as it gets closer at this point, so he was beginning to touch, he was touching the same thing that we understand now, that we incorporate into our orbital mechanics now, as at this point where when we're going in the same direction as the sun here, we get closer because there's less centrifugal force, because we're traveling slower past the sun than when we're traveling in the opposite direction, so we get thrown out. Well, you can see that Kepler doesn't. If you were to put a mirror across here, we would get symmetry. We would get symmetry in this model. If we put a mirror across here on that kind of horizon line there, we would get the same thing he's showing there. We would get symmetry. Of course, that's not what we see, which means that all Kepler's laws are non and void now. They don't apply, because we understand, it's not just about speed, it's also about density. So different objects traveling in the same, coming in, if their density is different. So the reason I'm saying this is that we can understand that what we're seeing here, and maybe it's better to use this model here. Now these models here, I can't show 2010, where we see the crossing here, where the points where we saw, like I say, 27th of February 2010 and the 11th of March 2011, where we saw the crossing point here, and then you can see we have to go another 2 years before we are starting to get to the point where we experience a flyby here. Except that I now know that these objects don't exit over here. I built this model before we actually understood the kind of exit trajectory of these objects, and so none of my models are correct at the moment, but they are. That's why I want to build the next astronomical model, to update all of this, because I made a terrible error in the last model, and each model I build, it's trying to push it forward and trying to lock it down. But we're coming to the point where all of these flybys are gonna cease, and we're going to be past this whole system. And as in, our sun is moving faster than Herculobus, or where in this model I call it Pluto. Or whether you want to call it Pluto, whether you call it Uranus, whether you want to call it Neptune, whether you want to call it Jupiter, whether you want to call it the blue Kachina, whether you want to call it the red Kachina, whether you want to call it whatever you want to call it, it's pretty much all part of the same system. It's all pretty much the same thing. It's just we reinvent it to keep us in this barbaric system, this old 500-year-old system that is a static sun model. And you remember what Einstein says, E equals mc squared. Energy equals mass. What is it? E equals m, mass, times the constant velocity of light, as in E equals mass moving very fast squared, which even that is an understatement, because it's not on the squared is on an ecliptic. We're talking about everywhere. We're talking about cubed. So really it should be E equals mc cubed, really, because we're not just talking about our ecliptic plane, you know, we're talking about all around us, everywhere, in all directions. So really, we could take that to so much bigger. But of course, when we're in a static sun model, we are not energizing. We're not coming into the full energetics of where we're really at. And because of all my understandings, and better to come back to again this model, and to come forward to, remember Carlos Ferrada, that was his big prediction on the 20th of January, where Jupiter, or the blue Kachina, Herculobus, what he would call Herculobus, crossed our sun, crossed the path of Earth. And all these models fit together, but like I say, when you see these objects, I need to get some of the twin tower. Every 12 years, they're the what I call Kerberos and Chiron in this model. This is the point where they're either coming in from underneath and going above, or they're coming from above and crossing down below, and that is because I haven't got, like I say, I made a massive mistake when I put these two together, and it was such a shame, because it took me a very, very long time to build this model because of the mathematics involved in building it. And then I made that massive mistake. It was such a tragedy. But it's trial and error, and so we have to go through these errors to try and build it out. Because when I built this first model, I was trying to ascertain the forward motion, and that's why these are so winding. It's because I didn't truly understand the forward motion. I didn't understand the 21st of June. I was building this model to try and understand the 21st of June. And when I finally worked it out, then I built this model. But of course I got to do the wrong way around, and like I say, you've got to work it, and you just think this is going to work. And some of the flybys did work, but many of them, then I started finding more and more flybys were failing, and I was just trying to understand, had I made massive mistakes in the overall model? And then I'd realised what I'd done. I got the two the wrong way round, and when I can see it in my mind's eye because I've done so much work on it, but obviously I'd set it all in motion by that stage, and so now I've got to put. I don't think it'll take me months to do it now. I think I'll be able to do it in a few weeks, but it maybe the course of a month. But I would love by the 21st of June to have this, so that those who want to, because when we connect with the 21st of June, for us, we think about the 21st of June as the longest day of the year, or those who are a bit more kind of astronomical can understand that the axis of our sun on that day is perpendicular to the ecliptic, and that our axis, the axis of our Earth, is also perpendicular to the axis of is also exactly parallel to the axis of the sun, and is exactly perpendicular to the ecliptic on the 21st of June, as it is on the 21st of December, when it's on the exact opposite side of the sun. But those can take it a little bit further. When you start building these models, you can realise that, this represents, if you like, the top side. It's like our whole solar system is sitting like that to the ecliptic of the system our sun is orbiting. And so this is the top edge. The 21st of June is the top edge, so we can also see it's the front edge. Now that's very, very complicated to explain, even though hopefully I might have just done it for those who can grapple with that a little bit. But the 21st of June is when you can cosmically align with the cosmos. It's one of those few times where we come together, where you have synchronicity, where you are aligning with the cosmos. And when you align with the cosmos on that day, you can align outside of the astronomical lie that that we're all kind of been living in as a result of the Newtonian deception which has been thrown upon you to live in the crazy systems where we live in a static sun model, we live in this 500-year-old model where it gives you aspects of truth, but you're living in an astronomical lie, and it's a very, very big, complex system, which has taken me, oh my God, I've been building these astronomical models now for kind of like coming on, more than 10 years, and and the flybys that I show you in this model are just a tiny fraction of the that was the second sighting of the pair that came in on the 28th of March 2016, and I said look out for them, and of course Becky Lewis had caught them on the it was either the 24th or the 26th, but I think it was it could have been Boxing Day, but it could have been the 24th or the 26th of December, and she was just like, oh my God, it was a sensational shot. She got massive views. It was an incredible sighting to see this object, this comet. And of course it was one of the comets. Remember, in my original models we were seeing them every 200 days, and I couldn't believe it, and I'd found all of these flybys every 200 days, and I said, isn't it interesting that when we come to this particular point there might be a sighting, because it was exactly 100 days after the previous sighting. And I said, I don't know if there is going to be a sighting right now, but wouldn't it be interesting as if there was a sighting exactly 100 days after it? What would that mean for building astronomical models, and where would that take us? Could everyone look out for it? And then of course she saw the pair on the 28th of March, which was exactly 100 days after the previous sighting, and she went out with her camera and she caught it, and she was just like, there it is, oh my God, there's two of them, oh my God. And we saw the pair, and of course we've had so many shots of the pair since then. Of course, everything is just after 2018, after May the 4th, 2018, where we got the long duration volcano, where, Kilauea, which is going off now. It's been going off for months, but it was the first long duration volcano that we'd seen for enormous amounts of time. They're very rare. The last time, and of course, then we got to 2021 where they went absolutely crazy, and we had, remember, we started the in 2021 with the Iceland volcano going off, and it broke all the records apart from Galileo's kind of like the sightings of the long duration eruption of La Palma in 1584 or 1585, which was the longest duration volcano ever observed. This is when we were seeing, obviously Galileo's time, when we were seeing the big blue Caccino, and he was saying, I can see it right there, and he was put under house arrest because we could obviously keep seeing these massive objects so super close. They just defy all our imagination because they contradict our standard model. Everything we're seeing right now is contradicting our standard model. And so and of course he was put under house arrest and never allowed to speak to another member of public, because he said he could see it right there. And so after by the time Newton comes along and gives credence supposedly to Galileo and say Galileo was correct, all the planets move as Copernicus said, which was this astronomical model that we live in now. Who though he kind of released it, he released his work not long before Galileo's time. He released it on his deathbed, but he postulated all this when he was much younger, but he couldn't release that work because he would have been burnt at the stake, literally, for postulating that. He would have been literally burnt at the stake to back then we were in the Aristotle model of the flat Earth, and Earth was in the center of the universe, supported by the hand of God, and everything orbited the Earth. And Copernicus challenged that. Others have challenged that. Obviously, Copernicus challenged that. Kepler turns up at the same time as Galileo's, and we start getting all these crazy sightings. These big objects are being seen. Everything's and then 84 years after, the first big sighting in actual fact was 1596, 1597, SETI B or Mirror. which was our first big, you know, the first dwarf planet of all the kind of 600 or 700 kind of like dwarf planets we've discovered since then. You know, and we live in these kind of crazy astronomical lies, and of course every 84 years after that we're going to get, like I say, Isaac Newton and all the crazy sightings that were going on that would just be boiled down to Halley's Comet with Isaac Newton, plus obviously all his orbital mechanics that lead us to kind of give us the kind of like the orbital mechanics that we use today. And then, after that, it's not exactly 84 years after that, but actually when you do the mathematics, you'll see the kind of the 84-year pattern. Ironically, we give Uranus an 84-year orbit, and then Neptune turns up, and we're going to give it a 2 times 84-year orbit. And then, obviously, Pluto turns up 84 years later, and we give it a 3 times 84-year orbit, and so on and so forth. We've got this crazy pattern where we live in this astronomical lie, and yet we have the 21st of June. And you remember that was I often think about that shot posted by Jeff P on the 14th of October 2016, the most epic shot. It's been endless epic shots where he captures this, what is clearly Jupiter in its stripes, and it's caught in the northeast sky, right where Mars was, and it clearly is zapping into the side of Mars, even though it's unbelievable. It's just caught on a webcam. It's just beyond comprehension shot, and just beyond our belief, because we, like I say, it contradicts our beliefs. We're still living in a religious, the Newtonian model gives you the orbital mechanics, gives you supposedly gravity and all these orbital mechanics, and then takes it all away and says, and gives you all the planets giving in a perfect circle. It's like I say, it's classic kind of like Masonic kind of like 33-degree masonry. It's the Masonic cult making kind of rules of give you 33 degrees of truth, like I say, 33 degrees of lies to drive a deception, to take you into a static sun model, to drive an agenda. And the agenda is to take your power away, to take your connection from the cosmos away, so you live in an astronomical lie, which is disconnect from the 21st of from your cosmic direction in the scheme of things, where you're going, where you're really fundamentally going, your cosmic direction. And that's what we can connect with on the 21st of June. And so, 21st of June is a big time to connect with the cosmos. It's a massive time, and I'm in my boat now. I'm in Devizes, heading up to Honey Street, and heading up to Silbury Hill, and obviously the stones. I probably won't be at Stonehenge this year, but I'm going to be in Avebury. I'm going to be at the Cosmic Centre, and anyone who's in Britain who wants to meet me there and make a cosmic connection with me and come on a pilgrimage with me, please come and join me. Please come and connect and make a cosmic connection and connect with the cosmos, connect with where you're going astronomically. It's been such a massively hard time for me to try and do this model, because I go against the grain of so much, and I know for so many people I'm just a weirdo for not kind of like, most people are just believing right now that Pluto is going retrograde and is the god of the underworld. It's like calling God the devil. When you call this Blue Kachina, the home of the 5th dimension, where you're going on the highest level, to call it the underworld, to name it the underworld, to say it's the furthest thing away from you, when you're getting all the earthquakes, when you're getting all the volcanoes, when you're getting blatant massive sightings of it, when you see the mathematics of it, how it all comes together, where you can see how ridiculous the present Copernicus model actually is that you live in right now. And to have this thing that is evil, and it's retrograde, and it's bad, and it's going against you. You're throwing negativity at the 5th dimension, the home of the highest level of of the human soul, where of the home of the human soul, the consensual realm, not the where souls go when they're ready to go into a consensual realm, not just exist in their own individual earth astral realms, but when they're ready to merge into when they've come to a state of peace and they're ready to merge with and exist in harmony with other souls and bring all of their best into a higher realm. That is what that object is. That is what Jupiter really is, what the Blue Kachina really is. That is the home of the fifth dimension. That is not the highest frequency in the universe by far, but is the highest frequency of soul from an earth perspective of where we go on a higher level. It's certainly not where, we can take our pets and the animals that we love and that sort of stuff. They can go there. That animals go to another realm completely, ironically. Although some animals, like I say, pets and animals that you love can come to the fifth and exist on the fifth and visit you on the fifth. You can get visitors on the fifth from all over the universe. But that is where the human souls go when they are ready to go to a higher dimension, when they've learnt peace, and they're not just about how important they are and how special they are and how unimportant you are and how unspecial you are. It's all about equality and equal and fairness and honor. And that's where we go. That's our highest, that's our high place. And so this is a wonderful opportunity on the 21st of June to connect to this very high space. It's where we merge. And so what I was going to show you there was just going to come to some of the crop circles, because you can remember remember when I built my astronomical model on the 20 in 2020, my latest astronomical model. I'd shown it in a whole new way. I was more than I'd never built it in. I had built 1800 years worth of flybys. I'd shown you an 1800 year flyby, and I'd been working on it. But when I built this model in 2020, and I showed you this appeared. This, I didn't see that. I'd seen this symbol. I don't know if you remember that. Where was it? Oh yes, seen that. I'm going to come back to that later. It's probably AI. I mean, I'm almost sure it's AI. But third phase of the moon have posted it. But I'm going to come back to that because it's. I mean, I'm sure. Like I say, I'm sure it's AI. But obviously, imagine if that was real. But just back to what I was going to show. What I was going to show. Do you remember this? Remember when I posted. Do you remember that? Showing the 50p coin, with the commemoration to Isaac Newton, where we see the real system on the 50p coin that we actually live in, shown on on the back of a 50p coin. Hilarious. But no, I wasn't going to show you that. I was going to show you. Do you remember when I said, well, the fabled? I mean, these were old models, so it was before this, but these were old astronomical models before 2020. Where is it? I've obviously missed it. But I'd been building towards it, and then finally making noise there. I'd shown how just cut the volume on that. How I discovered that there'd been this discovery in a Mexican cave of it was a mature grey alien, which was this here, cradling a baby Inca god, and then a mature Inca god cradling a baby grey alien, and on the side of the skull of the mature grey alien there was that symbol. And my ex-partner Rach had seen the same symbol in a crop circle in 2009, and we put the two together, and they were exactly the same. And it was just like, oh my god! And when I put the two together, I was showing how they were the same thing, and you could see that what was actually happening is we were being given this idea of motion in it. But you could see, obviously, if we were much closer to that, and you can see that we were much closer to this was, if we were even closer, this was much bigger, and this one was much bigger. You could see how it's this big one and these two, and we're also giving the idea of forward motion, and so it was giving us this symbol, and this was in Wiltshire, where I'm heading right now, in the boat, and how we're being given. They're desperately trying to give us this idea of motion, but also in some of these models, we're seeing how these two systems are coming together, and what was the one that I was gonna? I mean, there's very similar things, but one I particularly liked was that really drew my attention. If I can find it after seeing all of those, was we're seeing all the different phases of these different flybys. I'm just trying to find it. This one here is almost like it's our different notions of direction it's like our astronomical and the real astronomical system that we live in. This is on the 21st of June. We are aligning. We've come to a moment, a time where we are truly aligned to the cosmos. And when we align to the cosmos and we take the time out to align, and we go onto a pilgrimage and we align, the cosmos aligns with us. And this is an important time to align. Such an incredible time to align and to make your divine connection. And so I'm going to finish this story with, I'm going to come back now to redirect notice, that's not even available anymore. So look, I'm just going to open that up, and I'm going to keep that if I can. If it will let me. Is it going to let me? That's about as big as I can get it. I'm going to keep that there. I can't seem to make it any smaller, but just want me to think about that. And when I say what I'm about to say, actually, if I make it slightly smaller, then I can open it on screen myself, and when I edit this video. But I want to tell you a little bit of a crazy story that happened about 4 or 5 years ago, and I'm going to close on this, and hopefully I'm going to see you on the 21st of June. Whoever, that's where I'm going to be at Silbury Ring. Maybe I'll jump in a car and get a lift to Stonehenge. But I got a funny feeling that I'm going to be around Silbury Ring, and I can remember I don't know if you ever remember, I met John Smith, who was all about UFOs, and I read an excerpt of his book around about 2021. You'll see it's around about the time of the solstice in 2021, and I read a chapter of his book, and I'd met him up on the I'd met him up at Stonehenge, not Stonehenge, at Silbury Ring. I've met him up at the pub there, the Honey Street, which is where I'm heading to, and so that's a nice little place where you can connect with me there. But I'd met him there, and he was with a bunch of people, and they were like, "Oh, he's a bit unusual. He's a bit, he's a bit of an odd one. He keeps going on about UFOs." And I said, "Oh my God!" I said, "Don't say anything bad about him, because I worship them. I kiss their feet. You know what I mean? Anyone who's got the courage to speak a truth, I just absolutely worship the ground they step on." I said, "I'd love to be introduced," and they were like, "Oh my goodness me!" So they introduced me to this guy they'd met, and someone just given me a donation on my channel, and so it was, and I said, I'd really love to get a copy of your book, and he said, "Well, I just want to give you a copy of your book. You don't have to give me any money." And I said, "Well, in lieu of you give me a copy of your book, I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna read it now." And I had the flu, or what they were calling COVID or something like that. But I had the flu at the time, and so I had to, and we were in a lockdown. You weren't really supposed to be out, and blah blah blah. But so I had to go back anyway. I was feeling a bit rough, and I had, like I said, a cold, or I had the flu, and I went back, and so I thought I'd probably and it'd been raining and it'd been terrible weather and that sort of stuff, and then I got over my flu, and I went to the pub and he was still there. And I said, listen, I really want to give a donation to your work, because I've just read a chapter of your book and it's just utterly blown me away. It's just the most incredible thing. And he'd met this woman, and they'd gone out of the pub, and everyone in the pub thought it was a bit of a kind of like, it was a bit of a weirdo, a bit like, yeah, well, anyway, I thought it was a bit of a weirdo because he went on about planets and UFOs and blah blah blah, and he'd taken this woman outside, and inadvertently he'd taken her on this massive spaceship that was the size of a massive city. And she didn't remember at first, and then they'd had to walk down from the top of the hill. And as they walked down from the top of the hill, they got back to the pub. And he said, do you remember anything? And she said, yeah, we came out. And he said, do you remember us walking up the top of the hill? And suddenly she realised that they hadn't walked up the top of the hill. And then he said, try and remember what had happened. And then she started remembering the whole thing of what happened, and she'd looked up and she'd seen the side of the spaceship, and even though she didn't remember when she was walking down from the hill, she'd seen the side of the spaceship going one way and the side of the spaceship going the other way, and it just went off to the horizon. It was so huge. It was just the whole side of it was just beyond comprehension, massive. And she all started coming back to her. Anyway, I'd read that chapter, and it was like 2021, around about June the 21st. So you can find that chapter by John Smith. So you never know, I might see John Smith up there. I think his name is John Smith. I'm pretty much sure he wrote in the name of John Smith. But his stories are just absolutely incredible. And I said, look, I really want to give a donation. I read a chapter of your book on my channel, and I really want to give a donation to your cause, because you asked me for some editorial help. And I said, I struggle to keep in contact with people. I struggle to communicate like I used to do. And so when stuff comes in, I have great appreciation, but I struggle to be in communication with people because I've got into so much trouble and so much difficulty. I've got so many blocks with it that if someone gives to me, I'm here to say thank you for all of those who give to me, and to all of you that do give to me. I am so sorry if I'm so crap for communication. I struggle with communication with people through this because it creates this enormous complication for me, because I don't know why it happens to me, but I really, really struggle to do this work and to stay in communication. And so when you give to me, you're giving to my work, and you're giving, and hopefully I in return give back to you, and I can offer you something back by the work that I do. I do this with it. I do this cosmic connection. I offer that back to you in gratitude. So what you're giving to me, I'm trying to give back to you, and I go with so much honor and respect for those who give to me. Honestly, thank you so much. Honestly, thank you so much for all of you that give and have helped me a little along the way, because I don't get very much in this, and I'm, it is what it is. But anyway, he said, do you want to go up to the Stones? He said, oh, I've given you the book. I don't want any money for the book. And I said, no, I'm not giving you money for the book. The book's being received with love. But because I can't give you editorial help, and I know you need some help, if I can offer you some money for the cause, not for the book's received with love. If I can give you some money for your cause, it will make me feel a lot better that I can give you something, because I value your work so much. And he was just overjoyed that I would want to give him something. And so he said, do you want to go to the Stones and with me? I'll take you up. And I just had my boat up there. I didn't have a car. So we jumped in his truck and we drove up to the Stones, and it wasn't raining anymore. It was purpley night. And he said, you go that way, I'll go this way, and we'll meet on the avenue at the bottom, as in the avenue of stones at the bottom. So I walked one way and I saw a few shooting stars and a few satellites, but nothing that really I could definitely say, well, that's a UFO or something. And when I got back to him, he said, did you see anything? And I said, well, I saw some pretty cosmic things. I definitely saw shooting stars. No, I definitely think I saw some satellites, but who knows? They could have been UFOs. And he looked at me and he said, look up now. And as he said, "Look up now," he put his hand up. He didn't touch me. He put his hand up to my left hand side, my left shoulder. But he didn't touch me. He just put his hand up, and he looked down. He looked down. This hand on my heart, absolutely hand on my heart. This is exactly what happened. And he looked down. And he said, "Look up now." He wasn't looking up. I was, and I looked up, and he looked down, and this light appeared up in the sky above me, and it tracked my exact forward motion, my forward, as where I was looking, directly above me, and it went forward like that, and then it went pop, and it just popped out of sight. And the moment it popped out of sight, he looked up at me, and he said, "That's just for you, that is." And I was just like, oh my God, it just made me go, oh my goodness, it was absolutely fantastical. It was absolutely fantastical. So I'm going on the 21st of June to connect with that energy and to connect with the cosmos. And I'd love to trumpet. I'd love to also connect with you guys on that day. Go and see what it is, Shelley. Go and say hello. Go and say hello. Go on in. Go and say hello. The trumpet blows, isn't that mad? The trumpet blows. Just when we sort of talk about that, I mean, the big connection, the big like, whoop. Anyway, so I want to connect with the cosmos. That's what I want to connect with all of that, which is working with the earth and working with this. So please, if you're wanting to connect on the 21st with the cosmos, come and join me on the 21st. Please come and join me on the 21st. Please come and connect. Whether I'm going to go to Glastonbury this year or not, I don't know. I'm not able to communicate with most people at the moment because I'm a bit too mad for most people at the moment. I'm a little bit too insane for most people at the moment. I don't know what that noise is really, but isn't it funny? As soon as I talk about kind of like meeting up there at that time, it's the trumpets go. Anyway, 21st of June, please come and connect. I'm gonna ask again. I'm absolutely breathless at the moment. If you want to assist me in any way at the moment and help me build this astronomical model a little bit more, please do so. You can see my what do you call it, PayPal connection is on my channel. Where is it? It's view your channel. You see, there's a somewhere around here. There's a PayPal on the channel artwork. There's a PayPal link if anyone wants to donate anything. Please, no one's really viewing my channel now. It's pretty dead. It seems that it's kind of like I realise that it is what it is. I've just got to accept it is what it is, and that it seems that I'm shadow bound now, and this whole channel is shadow bound now, and that breaks my heart a little bit because I know that my message is not getting out there, and only the most Zionistic messages are getting out there right now, and it's just it's, even though it seems that Keir Starmer is just about to change his tune about what he's about to break ties with, supposedly break ties with Israel, but to me he's just doing what he's just it's a theatre show now. He got absolutely hammered by Nigel Farage in their local elections. He lost every local seat, and that's where your real power is in this country. General elections you get lots and lots of power, but local elections, that's where all the plan and permission for everything is done. If you lose your local election power, that's what it's really all about. That's where they have control over this country in a massive way, and Nigel Farage has just won nearly every seat in the last, it wasn't all the whole country in the elections just gone, but basically our local elections just been swept by Nigel Farage, and now there's a desperate push to unite Europe into this massive kind of like into this massive aggressive front, just as I said would happen when I wrote Laughing Gas, where, you know, that Britain would be used as a Trojan horse to break up the European alliance and then feed Europe into a massive war against Russia, all on the back of a kind of like holy war in the Middle East, against leading up to a massive war against Iran, and this whole thing is unfolding now. And so sorry about that noise. Trumpets are going. So so there you go. It's time to begin the pilgrimage of the 21st of June now, to start thinking about your alignment, why you want to align, what you want to achieve with your alignment, what you'd like to bring into your life. And I said that I was going to end with a little story about something that happened, and I said I was going to put that up as a little thing to think about. And that story was that a number of years ago, I was on the way home. I wasn't. I was off to the pub with two other friends, sorry, and it was late in the afternoon, early in the evening. The sun was just on the horizon. It was a beautiful, warm day. It was just perfect day to cycle off to the pub and have a pint. As I set off, I suddenly thought, you know what, it's going to be freezing cold. I'm going to turn around and go and get a top, because even though the weather was nice, I knew that we'd have a drink in the pub and then the temperature would suddenly drop and I'd be freezing for the cycle home. So I thought, I'm just going to go back and get something warm, like a jacket. So I dashed back, and when I came back, my friends were kind of like standing there, and they were kind of observing this thing in the lake, and they were like, God, it's a wheel. It's a wheel in the middle of the lake. And as we looked at the wheel in the middle of the lake, I was like, it was obvious it was a car, and yet somehow it wasn't obvious it was a car. As stupid as it sounded, because you could only see the wheel, and then you could still see a tiny bit of the rear bumper, just a tiny bit of the rear bumper. And I was like, is that a wheel? I said, that's probably that's a car. That's a car in the lake. And we're like, oh my God, it can't be a lot. I was like, it's a fucking car in the lake. I was like, it's our car. And it was just like, there was a bit of confusion, like, what should we do, and that sort of stuff. I was like, look, we just got no choice. One of us have just got to go in and just investigate. Can't just walk away from that. I was like, it might have just gone in. And then it was just like, well, and then my mates were just like, well, got to be careful, because it could be, there's a ledge there, because the lake kind of goes in, and then the car, there's these, they're all these peat lakes, and they dig out the peat, and so it goes down, and then you get these sheer drops, and if something's on that ledge, it could drop off into the ledge, and it was just like, so you've got to be careful when you go in, because you've got these big ledges and under the water, and it's very dangerous to go in, more because people kind of they walk across, they don't realise that there's kind of these irrigation channels that are set in, and these big holes that you can walk across and not really know. So, but anyway, it was a bit of concern. I was just like, look, we don't want to, we don't know who's in there. I was more thinking there could be kids in there or something like that, or, you just didn't know what was going on. You just couldn't see. It wasn't enough. You just couldn't get, there was just the wheel. So I gave my mate a phone. I said, look, just ring 999. I passed him my phone. I said, just ring 999, and let's just do the most logical steps that you would do if an accident happened. You ring 999. I'm gonna wade in. It's probably cool and that sort of stuff. Anyway, I started wading into the water, and I got up to my waist, and I got up a bit deeper. I started going up to my chest and that sort of stuff, and then I started getting closer to it, and I could suddenly hear the sound of like a petrol pump going, or a pump of some sort going. And I was like, oh my God, I can hear a fucking pump, And I started panicking, and I started going into this panic. And I started going absolutely crazy into this panic. And then I got to this car, and I was trying to swim down to the door, and I couldn't open the door. But I was just in this mad panic where I wanted to smash the window. I just wanted to absolutely smash the window and just do everything. And I went into this absolute crazy panic about because I couldn't see an open door, and then I was on door on one side, maybe the door was open on the other side, but I was just trying to get to this side, and I didn't really want to, because the other side was even deeper to go round, and that sort of stuff, and I could just get down there. I couldn't quite open the door, and everything I did, I just couldn't do it. I couldn't smash the window, couldn't do anything. I was just going absolutely crazy, and then I was just like, I need a rock, I need a rock, I need a rock, and I was just in this mad panic of just what am I going to do, and I was just going, and then it was just like I was having a heart attack on my left hand side. I could feel this pressure as I went into this absolute panic. I wanted to smash this window in all my might, and it was causing my whole body, all my muscles down my side, to contract to this point where I was just like, I can't. It's like it was physically painful, especially down my left side, like I was gonna have like I was having a cramp in my arms and in my chest and right down here. It was the most strangest sensation, and then just suddenly I looked at the sun, and I just had the strangest experience, and I said, it was like somehow it came out of me, and I said, "You've left your body. You've left your body. It's time for you to move on. You have to trust that it is your time to move on now. It is your time. You filled your boots with everything you came to get here. You filled your boots with everything you come to get here. You have chosen to leave at this time. You have to trust in that now. You have to move on. The door is open for you now. It's time for you to go." And the sun was on the horizon, and I felt this enormous energy open up, and I was looking at the sun, and as the energy opened up, I felt this being move through me and go. And as this energy opened up, the feeling I felt was just the most incredible thing. And I realised that I was there for his transit. And we found out later that it was a him, and he was actually a friend of a very dear friend of mine who's also passed on now. And but I felt him go to the most incredible place, and obviously I went in there with the intention of, I didn't know, in my mind's eye, I was just, God, imagine if there's kids in there. God, imagine if the mum and kids in there in the hole. You know what I mean? It was just like, so I had to go in. I had to do something. I had to try to do something for, I just had to do that because I knew I would have never been able to live with myself if I hadn't done something. And so we did everything we could, but I realised that I was sent there, and the irony that I was there with this other guy. I won't say his name, but I was there with this other guy that had written this book, who studied with. He was the one who's first taught me about carbon dioxide, and he'd studied with Stephen Harding at the Loughborough College, and had written a book about the environment. And I was there with this other guy, this really old guy with his long grey hair. He was a beautiful old guy that had just come over. He'd left. He was English, but he'd been living in San Francisco forever, and he'd been making these huge, great stained glass windows. That was his job, making these beautiful, huge stained glass windows for temples and things like that. So he had these amazing spiritual beings that had been there at the time he died, and that had been there for his transit, and I felt that I'd been there for his transit because he'd obviously died in this point of. I can imagine most death is traumatic. Certainly my mum left in the most beautiful state. I know she left with cancer and that sort of stuff, but she left. She'd been singing Hare Krishna songs, and she left very consciously. And when she left, she gave my hand this most beautiful squeeze, and I felt my grandfather, her dad, come down and meet her, and I felt this whole union. I felt this door open, I felt the absolute bliss, and I felt the gratitude. And so I know that I was there for his transit. And making these connections right now for what we're going into right now. It's so important to connect with the cosmos and to come out a lot of the belief systems that we're in right now, and to come back to the cosmos and connect to the cosmos right now, and to make your connection, because we've got some crazy times coming in. We've got some crazy times coming in, and there might not be someone there for you at that point, in all the chaos and all the worry and all the fear. And if you can't go to a higher place, then you're going to bounce back to somewhere either on the earth astral planes, or back into another human life on this level, because you're not going to make a connection. I'm not saying you're not going to make a connection, but now is a wonderful time. This 21st of June, you can see it's just getting madder and madder. This is a wonderful time where our astronomical model can align with this astronomical with the true astronomical model that you're really living in, the real, the cosmos that you're actually truly part of, not the astronomical lie that you've been living in. And so, sorry about that, it keeps jumping out, doesn't it? And so that's why I left that image there, is to kind of like, is to come back to your astronomical cosmic connection of the 21st of June. Come in, start making that pilgrimage in your mind's eye. Like, remember when I started it last year, and I'm still trying to post chapters of my book, but to be honest with you, just trying to get the boat through the boat safety and everything else like that. The boat's been broken down for months now. I had problems with the water pump, then I've had the boat safety, and it's just sucked up every penny that I've had just to try and keep this whole thing going. And I've just been, after I split my head open and everything else like that, everything's been a bit of a struggle, so it's been a bit difficult, but I'm doing all right. I'm coping, and if I'm only just saying that because I want to pour more time into building this astronomical model, so we have this new astronomical model, so I feel that I'm complete for this time, because then we've got the whole thing. We've rebuilt this. I feel that humanity, whether it's just a tiny part of humanity, a part of humanity needs to be connected to the real, true system that we really live in right now. And that's all I'm really trying to do with this. That's why I'm so obsessed with this. So please dig deep. If you want to help me, please, many of you have, and those you have helped me so far, please hear me when I say thank you so much. I couldn't have done it without your help so far, and I know I'm so crap with communication. Like I say, there'll be a time when I can actually sit down and go through all of this, and we can all come together with gratitude and with love and with joy when we get past this, because we will get past this. We're going to come to a point where we come back to singularity, where we come to this place where I wrote Laugh and Gas, where I was given the big message, where I'm saying that duality is going to end, and that we're all going to come back to one soul, one human. There's not going to be a duality. There's not going to be any backseat drivers. It's just going to be one human and one soul. And we're going to come back to peace of mind, peace of human mind. And in that, it doesn't mean it's the end of badness, but there's going to be one human and one soul, singularity again. So you're not going to be a living battle. You're not going to be plagued with doubt. It's going to be peace of mind. We're going to be able to read books again. We're going to be able to focus our minds again and be able to achieve wonderful big things without plaguing ourselves with doubt, without having a diseased mind that can't be focused, a flitted mind, a broken mind, a doubting mind. All of that is gonna go to the wayside. Everything is going to come through the human heart again. And these are the connections that we need to make right now. We need to come back to ourselves again. And that's what all of this is about. This is what all these crop circles are really trying to tell you. They're trying to tell you to come back to this aligning frontal point again. To come back. And so we're going to meet and align at this cosmic point. And that's what the 21st of June is all about. It's about cosmic alignment. When we're even doing this symbol, this is what it's all about. This is coming back to this cosmic alignment. That's why we gathered at the stones, to make our cosmic alignment again, so we could be, how can you be a cosmic being if you do not connect with the cosmos? And how do you connect with the cosmos? How do you connect when those kind of when those lines, that crossing point, the ecliptic, it's much it's bigger than just the longest day of the year. It represents so much more. And so 21st of June, and solstice blessings to you wherever you are. And bring your special alignment to that time. Thank you so much for all of those who've helped me, all of those who've been in my life. I'm so sorry I've struggled. Those of you who've watched my penultimate video, my two last videos, when I cut my head open and the stories that came out and the crazy story, these big things that have been happening in my life just lately, and this understanding that we're on the back end of this massive story now, that vision that I had that made me write Laughing Gas when I suddenly realised that I died on the when did it happen? It happened on February the 14th, which was the day the asteroid came over Russia and caused all the windows to break out, where I fell down in the boat, in the black hole, in the hole on my boat, in the engine bay, and I smashed my head open. This big scar, which is healing a lot now. It's still a bit raw, but it's definitely kind of not as visual now. But I realised that was the day that I died. I know that sounds insane, but that was the day I died in 2025, on the 14th of February. And then I got bounced back to late August 2006. And I knew everything about Britain being used as Britain leaving Europe, being used as the Trojan horse to break up the European alliance, Europe being fed in, this massive war that was being attempted to being started between Russia and Europe, that would make America great again, through the weapons sale and through this massive war that could be started, which could retake hegemony. But really what was being attempted wasn't to retake hegemony, it was an attempt to destroy this planet. Because you understand, when Einstein said that if the Third World War starts, the Fourth World War starts with bows and arrows, what he really meant by that wasn't that we would all destroy ourselves and have to start over again. No, Earth would be another Mars at the end of that we would have no future, that we would only be able to go back to the days. We'd have to redo this whole age again, because there wouldn't be a future to go to. He wasn't saying that we would have to restart over on this Earth and then go back to bows and arrows. No, he was saying there is no Earth after World War III, that the only thing we can do is go back. And so when me writing Laughing Gas wasn't me having a vision about this thing happening in the future, it was me coming from the future and coming back to 2006 and having this memory of everything that happened that I've been living through. That's why it's been so traumatic for me, going through this whole thing. That's why it's been so difficult for me, turning me inside out and upside down, and so painful for me, having to live in this pain of seeing that. It's been an agonizing process, and it's been difficult for me to stay in connection with people, because I've just been in this utter emotional pain, seeing it and seeing my friends that I knew that they went to the fifth, they went up to many of them went up to a higher dimension, others went back in time. You can see the guy who wrote, Ingersoll Lockwood, when he wrote the Laconics of Coal and the Adventures of Baron von Trump and the Last President, where he he wrote that in the 1850. Clearly, he was one of the people that bounced back from this very time, and he went back to, you know, the 1850s. I went back to 2006. Some of us bounced back to our earlier incarnations. It's just that I bounced back to an earlier time in this incarnation. He obviously, Ingersoll Lockwood, you know, when he died, he obviously died and bounced back to the 1850s, of an incarnation in the 1850s. Some of us went straight up to the fifth, and you know, we went where we went, but that was my experience to write Laughing Gas. I've released quite a lot more chapters on I've put it up free on my Patreon, on my Patreon, so you can follow them there. But you know, I think that, you know, so many people have become massive Trump fans now that we're blind to this now, and we're in a different story. You know, it's got so many friends who think that Trump's the second coming and he's here to kind of bring world peace, and it's maybe he is, maybe he is. I'm not saying he isn't. I'm saying that, you know, you don't need to be going via another human being to bring you to a high place, because they might not be taking you where you think they're taking you. Your best connection right now is not through Trump or through Starmer or through any third party. It's through your own divine connection to the cosmos right now. Anyway, you know, we're going, you know, Britain's gearing up for war right now. It's gearing massively up. Weapons production is going off the radar. Everything is gearing up for a massive war. You can see the direction it's going in. You know, it seems like an arms deal a deal is being done with Russia, but this was never the case. I can promise you that's not the plan. Everything that's coming out now is always to try and take, in essence, 1/3 truth, and then 1/3 that cancels truth, and then the agenda. And the agenda is a war. It's a massive war for the big agenda. That's what's really subverting this world. And you need to track your own intentions. Stop looking at what Trump is going to try and deliver and what anyone else is going to try and deliver, and think about where you want to go now and the connection you need to make right now. Because, you know, we've already done the bouncing back, and now we're here in the time where we correct the mistakes. Remember what the Colburn Bible says, where it depicts, it talks about the great dragon. You know, this was the book that Henry VIII released when he, you know, the disillusionment of the monasteries, when he burnt all the monasteries down, and he hung, draw and quartered the Glastonbury abbot, and then he released all the works that have been in the great library under the Glastonbury Abbey. And one of those books he released was this tale of this great dragon that comes periodically between these at the end and the beginning, if you like, the end and the beginning of every great cycle. This great dragon. And it said two fundamental things which I'll always remember. It said, you know, the dragon doesn't come to punish humanity for the mistakes it makes. It punishes humanity for the mistakes it fails to rectify. And this is our time. We're on the back end. We've already done it once, and now we're doing it again to correct those mistakes. We are on the way out. We're at the correcting point where we've come to fix all these problems. You know, so we've got to now get this right. We've got to overcome this. We can't be investing totally in hoping and believing that someone else is going to be our second coming. We have to make our divine connection ourselves to where we're going and to who we want to be right now. Yeah, Trump might be the second coming, and a big golden escalator might appear from the sky, and he might be this benevolent, wonderful human being that comes and just gives out love and beauty and all that sort of stuff. But imagine if that's wrong and you put all your money on that. Where's your connection to the cosmos right now? What about divine connection? Tapping into your true cosmology. Please hear what I say and make this connection right now. Make your connection. Sorry, it's been a long one. Take care and good luck through this time, and source blessed. You know, I say that because, you know, I always kind of like, my ex-partner used to call, energy earth. I'm trying to think what their channel's called now. What is their channel name? I'll tell you. Hang on a sec. What are they called? I do love their channel. Evolutionary Energy Arts. I do love their channel. My ex-girlfriend used to call them Mork and Mindy, and I used to say it's not Mork and Mindy, it's Mike and Cindy. But Cindy always says "source blessed" at the end of her videos, at the end of the video, and Mike, you know, has got, they've both got such lovely pearls of wisdom to offer, and but source blessed, and you know, so much love out there. Thank you so much for all your time. Thank you for following me so far, and you know, you understand. Can I just say one last thing, as because, you know, whether you're with me or not, you know, when I show you this, and I said to you, you're going to see this, and obviously, you know, this is the point where it goes into, this is where it crossed right in the middle. So this is the point where we see it in the night sky. This is our point where we get a view of it. It's not right behind us, but this will be in the kind of, like, most likely a shot in the early hours of the morning. Most likely, or it could be, you know, I'm not too sure where that shot was from, but it's not actually behind us. It's just, you know, it will be seen in the unless you're seeing from way up in the northern hemisphere or something like that, then it's a bit different. But or the southern hemisphere, but that's unlikely because it is probably more visible. Well, difficult to say because it's on the ecliptic at the moment, but it's more likely to be seen from somewhere in the early hours of the morning because of where it's positioned right now, because it's not literally right, you know, it's not right behind Earth, deep into our night sky. It's just getting visible in our night sky, which is why you're catching it there. But the reason I kind of like showed you the coming back to we're understanding the difference between Kepler's orbital mechanics and understanding our more modern understanding is where something's much closer when it's going the same direction as its primary it's orbiting, and then when it's going the opposite direction it gets slung off and it goes over here. So you can imagine, I say this is Earth, and it's Earth coming around our sun, and as it comes past the 21st of June, and then it starts getting flung out as it starts going the opposite direction. Obviously these what I call the pair, or what Alex Luhan first called the pair, when they come out and they come across out, they've come from whence they orbit, their object they're orbiting, and they get so close to our sun. Let's pretend this is our sun instead of planet X, and they come so close to our sun they actually get drawn into our sun, and they have to go across the front edge of our sun. They're doing what our Earth is also doing. So they come across the front of our sun, and then they're going to come round, and they're going to get thrown out as well. But these, I'm of mind, have got much more iron in their content because they're orbiting a dwarf planet that is spewing out not photons, it's not hydrogen going into helium. This is much denser atoms. You know, they've gone from hydrogen to helium, they've gone up the periodic table, and that's what you call a dwarf planet. It was once hydrogen, like a sun, and now it's denser, and it's turned all its hydrogen into helium. The helium's gone up to whatever's on the next of the periodic table. It's gone from carbon and blah 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 blah. It's getting denser and denser, and finally it's not spewing out kind of like helium and photons. It's spewing out ions or atoms that are coming out. It's much dense matter that's coming out. It's much heavier, and all these objects orbiting around it are absorbing all this iron that's coming out, so they're much denser, which means that we've got what Isaac Newton added to the equation was density. And so, you know, density as well as kind of like, you know, throwing all these, even though we don't see that because he cancels it all and says all the planets orbit in a nice pretty circle, and then he gives you these orbital mechanics, kind of, and then takes them all away and gives you this pretty circle where they're all orbiting in a circle around. So he kind of takes it all away at the same time. Classic, like I say, Newtonian kind of like Masonic kind of like cult, religious science. But you can imagine these objects are going to get much closer to us at this stage now. So this is where we get, when we get into this phase here, they're going to be much closer to us now, because we're all kind of running a much more parallel around here. This is our sinking point here now. They don't cross our paths or anything else like that, but they're going to be thrown off like we're being thrown off. So, but they're denser, which means they get much closer to us round at this point. So now we're at the point where we're going to get right from, you know, it's June here, but July, August, you know, this is the point where we're close to these objects. That's where the Schumann resonance is going to go off the radar. This is where we're going to start seeing massive, you know, we're already seeing massive changes in the way electricity is moving, because you can imagine that when the Schumann resonance, as in the electricity all around us, becomes greater than the electricity that we're pushing in our wires, then we start getting, everything starts working backwards. You know, like clocks will start going backwards because the amount of electricity is greater than the power that's actually in the batteries. So it's like everything, electricity starts going into things in a different way. Electricity can't travel down the wires in the same way, because the you know, it's like, you know, when you're dealing with a cell and you got fluids going into a cell, you know, you call it diffusion. But when, you know, where nutrients move, that, you know, there's more nutrients in the extracellular fluid around the cell, and so the nutrients can naturally diffuse into the cell. But imagine when there's so much activity already in the cell, that's got more stuff going on in the cell than outside of the cell. It's very difficult for the nutrients to move into the cell. So then we have what I think is called facilitated diffusion, where things are actually pulled in the cell. And then you get things like, you know, the cells in the thyroid that are so dense with kind of like with organelles within the cell that you can't actually, things don't diffuse into the cell whatsoever. They kind of more diffuse out. So you have these globules of fat that they call they developed them when they were in the vaccines. Do you remember when they were getting the mRNA into the vaccine? They had to use what do they call the things that they're beyond, because in physiology they call it active transport, where they use fats. They use fats to there's a special name for them, and Britain hold the patents of them, but I can't remember what the name of it. You call those, what you call the globules of fats that are specially designed, that globulate on the actual cell walls, and they pull things through because they wouldn't be able to get in. And it's the same kind of true of batteries. You know, you're getting electricity into a battery. You're kind of like, it's like a cell. You're trying to get energy, electrons into the cell. But imagine if and then you're forcing electrons into the cell, and then the plan is that the electrons then travel into a circuit, and they can travel out and make their way to Earth. But imagine if there's more. Imagine if the battery's trying to push the electricity out, but there's more electricity out. I mean, there was a time in Japan not so long ago when we had a Schumann resonance, a Schumann resonance spike, and you saw all the clocks in Japan go backwards. Well, that was exactly the sort of situation. So we're going to come to a very, very high Schumann resonance point where we're going to see power lines kind of go crazy. We're already seeing all the lights flickering, and we're seeing Schumann resonance going so high that the electricity, the amperage that we're all bathing in is higher than anything we're conducting. That all the power stops working. Can you imagine? Then you can start kind of like seeing why what they've potentially done with, imagine if all the systems out there fail, that they have to turn our cells, our own DNA into the computer systems. And anyway, starting on another subject there, but oh, I nearly remembered the name I was thinking of there. The transport systems on that for active transport that are used for the fat globules that are Britain's got all the patents on them. I mean, really, they're probably just using what the Indians do. It's probably just ghee, and they've just painted it in some way. But it's probably just ghee, because that's what the that was the fundamentals of when you go into a kind of like a what do they call it? When you go to India and you use the ghee to pull out all the heavy metals. And you all the rich actors and stuff like that, they go out and they like people like Tom Cruise, they all do the Pachakamas, and they go out to India and they just basically take all this ghee, and these are the I nearly had it there as well. It's on the tip of my tongue. The more I talk about it, but that's the kind of the same thing, as they take loads and loads of ghee to globulate on the cells and to allow as a transport system for heavy metals and stuff like that to come out of the cell and be pulled out, because you can't poo heavy metals out, you can't sweat them out, and you can't pee them out. So the only thing you can do is pull them out with oils. And so that's how. And then you take the heavy metals out, which attack the nervous system, and you attack the nervous system, you start aging massively. And if you can pull the heavy metals out, then your nervous system isn't being attacked, and so you start regenerating and you start becoming visibly younger, because your body starts regenerating. And oh my god, it's so nearly there, the word I was looking for there anyway. But it's just a way of thinking about what Schumann resonance is really doing when it's really rising up. It's very similar to what's happening in the physiology of your body. And your body's electric. Your body's kind of electric in the same way as well, really, because we do electron transfer. That's what's happening with the processing of energy is creating electron transfer. That's what the Krebs cycle is. That's what intracellular respiration is. It's basically creating electricity. It's moving electrons. It's same with photosynthesis. It's the process of moving adenine triphosphate, which is the fundamental energy currency of all living things. And whether it's cell, whether it's animal, whether it's human, whether it's plant, we do it in the cell with mitochondria, but it's still electricity. That's the power unit of the cell, but it's still processing ATT, adenine triphosphate. Oh god, I nearly had the word then, and it's just gone. Anyway, sorry, my whole subject base is as always just convoluted and a bit of all over the place, and my subject base is is big, but hopefully at some point or other you've understood on some level how important it is for you to make a cosmic connection on the 21st of June and do your little process wherever you are in the world. Invite your friends, be the ringleader of some real big cosmic process, and bring your friends in. And you may have to be that person that helps others do their big transit when the shit hits the fan. And the shit is hitting the fan, because that's the direction this is going. That's unfortunately the direction of the subversive agenda, which is bringing this planet down for its agenda. And we're going to try and bring this vibration up and take it to a good place. So at the moment I'm utterly shadowbound and no one's watching me, and most people think I'm a bit of a nutter, and maybe I am. And lipid. That's the word I was looking for. I knew it would come at the last minute. Lipids. They're the bits they're the kind of fats that do the active transport. And And how about that? At the last minute, I remembered it, and it's kind of like, same with batteries and resistors and stuff like that. We do the similar things that's happening in physiology with electricity that our cells are doing with kind of like with these with things like lipids. And obviously, you can turn DNA. DNA is a massive computer, and imagine if you could program a computer and upload a I mean, it's already a massive computer program, and an RNA is an empty DNA strand, and then you have an empty DNA strand, which is an RNA strand, and then you have all the nutrients. So when each part of the nutrient will go along that, just long. It's like a thumbprint. It's like a sellotape, putting a bit of sellotape on a thumbprint, and you get an RNA. So when you get a cell division, you've got your DNA, and then the DNA, when it goes into cell division, first of all, the DNA releases like a sellotape thumbprint of the DNA, and then that thumbprint will attract it's like the substrate of each element, and all of the different elements and everything else like that, and they all assemble along that. And as soon as that whole line assembles with all the different minerals and elements, and then what will happen is they create like a program. Literally, it is a program, and there's all these different points on them, and then that jumps into life, and that commands its own. It's got a power set, because it will be using the existing power unit, which is the mitochondria. That's the power, or that's the power, the power station, and that will process the ATT, the adenine triphosphate, which is going to create the intracellular respiration, which is going to feed the energy through the DNA strand. And as soon as it goes through the DNA strand, that energy, that kind of like that organism energy, that orgone energy is going to go through, and it's almost like an anti-gravity machine, and that thing's going to coil up and become a functioning computer system, and that's going to cause cell division. And as soon as cell division is going to come a place, it's going to command that computer program is going to command all the organelles, the mitochondria, and everything else the cell needs, the cell walls, everything. It's gonna create all of that. And imagine just splicing onto that DNA another RNA strand with a computer program in it. Could be a really basic program. I mean, they don't understand the computer programs on DNA. It's way too advanced for them even now, but they can see the division points, so they can see, that bit makes an eye, that bit makes a thing, or there may be the DNA for the eye, and there's all these massive programs within the DNA that creates all the different parts, the lenses and the irises and the kind of all the fluids and the blah blah blah, all the muscles, everything all connected in that DNA, all these programs. And suddenly you add a tiny little extra bit, which is like a massive computer, but except it's a super fast organic computer, because they're computers with a power unit. The idea of putting a chip in there is just like, it's like last century kind of notions of kind of programming, when you've got kind of like, you can just write a bit of RNA and then get it into the cell. And anyway, changing the subject a little bit there, but when you kind of think about what would you do if you absolutely knew that all the computer systems are about to go down, all the electric was about to go down, that electricity you wouldn't be able to push electricity down a wire. What would you do? What systems would you be operating? Where would the governments be thinking about? What systems would the governments use? Imagine if you could run a whole new computer system, or organically. That's what you've got to be thinking about. What's really going on? What they've been preparing for? What's actually happening? What happens when Schumann resonance goes off the radar? When it's bigger than anything you can push down a wire. The power around you is bigger than what you can push down a wire. Anyway, some big thoughts there, some big ideas, so much to take in. So thank you if you followed me this Thank you so much. And I will desperately try and build this last astronomical model and I'll be able to put all the overlays onto it like I didn't with the last one, because obviously I had too many errors. But wouldn't it be nice to have the whole thing, that the human mind you could cast your eyes on the model as it really is, not just a loose idea, but really see a real close idea with all the overlays. It could be life-changing. That's what I think. It could be life-changing. Honey in the heart, 1,000 thank yous, and thank you for following me this far. Sorry it's been a long one. Take care. Bye bye.